In October 1896, I entered a Cambridge school for young ladies to be prepared for Radcliffe. When I was a little girl, I visited Wellesley and surprised my friends by the announcement, "Someday I shall go to college, but I shall go to Harvard." When asked why I would not go to Wellesley, I replied that there were only girls there. The thought to go to college took root in my heart and became an earnest desire, which impelled me to enter into competition for a degree worth seeing and hearing. Girls, in the face of the strong opposition of many true and wise friends, when I left New York, the idea had become a fixed purpose, and it was decided that I should go to Cambridge. This is the nearest approach I could go to Harvard and to the fulfillment of my childish declaration. At the Cambridge school, the plan was to have Miss Sullivan attend the classes with me and interpret to me the instruction given. Of course, my instructors had no experience in teaching any but normal pupils, and my only means of conversation with them be reading their lips. My studies for the first year were English history, English literature, German, Latin, arithmetic, Latin composition, and occasional themes. Until then, I had never taken a course of study with the idea of preparing for college, but I have been well drilled in English by Miss Sullivan, and it has soon become evident to me teachers that I need no special instructor in this subject beyond a critical study of the book prescribed by the college. I had moreover a good start in French, and I received 6 months instruction in Latin, but German was the subject with which I was most familiar. In spite, however, of these advantages, there were serious drawbacks to my progress. Miss Sullivan could not spell out in my hand all that the book required, and it was very difficult to have textbook imposed in time to be of use to me. Although my friends in London and Philadelphia were willing to hasten the work, for a while indeed I had to copy my Latin in Braille so that I could recite with the other girls. My instructors soon became sufficiently familiar with my imperfect speech to answer my questions readily and correct mistakes. I could not make notes in class or write exercise, but I wrote all my compositions and translations at home on my typewriter. Each day Miss Sullivan went to the classes with me and spelled into my hand with infinite patience all that the teacher said. In study hours, she had to look up new words for me and reread notes and books I did not have in raised print. The tedium of that work is hard to conceive. Frau Groth, my German teacher, and the principal were the only teachers in the school who learned the finger alphabet to give me instruction. No one realized more fully than dear Frau Groth how slow and inadequate her spelling was. Nevertheless, the goodness of her heart, she laboriously spelled out her instructions in me in special lessons twice a week to give Miss Sullivan's a little rest. But though everybody was kind and ready to help us, there was only one heart that could turn drudgery into pleasure. That year I finished arithmetic, reviewed my Latin grammar, and read 3 chapters of Caesar's Gallic War. In German, I read partly with my fingers and partially with Miss Sullivan's assistance. Schiller's Leidwunderglück and Taucher, Heinz Harsreis Freitags aus dem Stadt Friedrichs des Großen, Rails Flog der Snohens, Lessings, Minna von Brennholz, and Goethes aus meinem Lebens. I took greatest delight in these German books, especially Schiller's wonderful lyrics, the history of Frederick the Great magnificent achievement, and the account of Goethe's life. I was descriptions of vine-clad hills, streams that sing and ripple in the sunshine, and wild regions sacred to tradition and legend, the great sisters of a long-vanished imaginative age, descriptions such as can be given only by those to whom nature is a feeling and a love as and an appetite. Mr. Gilman's instructed me part of the year in English literature. We read together As You Like It, Burke's speech on conciliation with America, and Macaulay's Life of Samuel Johnson. Mr. Gilman's broad views of history and literature and his clever explanation made my work easier, and pleasanter than it could have been had I only wrote notes mechanically with the necessarily brief examinations given in the classes. Brooks' speech was more instructive than any other books on a political subject that I have ever read. My mind stirred with the stirring times and the character round which the life of two contending nations centered seemed to move right before me. I wondered more and more, while Burke's masterly speech rolled on in mighty surges of eloquence, how it was that King George and his ministers could have turned a deaf ear to King's warning prophecy of our victory and their humiliation. Then I entered into the melancholy details of the relations in which the great statesman stood in his party, and to the representatives of the people I thought how strange it was that such precious seeds of truth, wisdom, should have fallen among the tales of ignorance and corruption. In a different way, Macaulay's life of Samuel Johnson was interesting. My heart went out to the lonely man who ate the bread of afflictions in Grub Street, and yet the mildest of toils and cruel suffering of body and soul always had a kind word and lent a helping hand to the poor and despised. I rejoiced over all his successes. I shut my eyes to his fault and wondered not that he had them, but that my heart not crushed or dwarfed his soul. But in spite of Macaulay's brilliancy and his admirable faculty of making the component place seem fresh and picturesque, his positiveness wearied me at times, and his frequent sacrifice of truth to effect kept me in a questioning attitude, very unlike an attitude of reverence in which I had listened to the Demosthenes of Great Britain. At a Cambridge school, for the first time in my life, I enjoyed the companionship of seeing and hearing girls of my own age. I lived with several others in one of the pleasant house considered. We all had an advantage of home life. I joined them in many of their games, even blind man's buffs and frolics in the snow. I took things with that interested us. Some of the girls learned to speak to me so that Miss Sullivan did not have to repeat their. At Christmas, my mother and little sister spent the holidays with me, and Mr. Gilman kindly offered to let Mildred study in his school. So Mildred stayed with me in Cambridge, and for 6 happy months, so we hardly ever part. It made me most happy to remember the hours we spent helping each other in study and sharing our recreations together. I took my preliminary examinations for Radcliffe from the 29th of June to the 3rd of July in 1897. The subjects I offered were elementary and advanced German, French, Latin and English, and Greek and Roman history, making 9 hours in all. I passed in everything and received honors in German and English. Perhaps an explanation of the method that was in use when I took my examinations will not be amiss here. The student was required to pass in 16 hours, 12 hours being called elementary and 4 advanced. He had to pass 5 hours at a time to have them counted. The examinations paper were given out at 9 o'clock at Harvard and brought to Radcliffe by a special messenger. Each candidate was known not by his name but by a number. I was number 233, but as I had to use a typewriter, my identity could not be concealed. It was thought advisable for me to have my examinations in a room by myself, because the noise of the typewriter might disturb the other girls. Mr. Gilman read all the paper to me by means of a manual alphabet. A man was placed on guard at the door to prevent interruptions. The first day I had a German. Mr. Gilman sat beside me and read the paper through first, then sentence by sentence, while I repeat the words loud to make sure that I understood him perfectly. The paper were difficult and I felt very anxious as I wrote out my answer on the typewriter. Mr. Gilman spelled to me what I had written, and I made such changes as I thought necessary, and he inserted them. I wish to say here that I have not had these advantages since in any of my examinations. At Radcliffe, no one reads the paper to me after they are written, and I have no opportunities to correct error unless I finish before the time is up. In that case, I correctly only such mistakes as I can recall in the few minutes allowed, and make notes of these corrections at the end of my paper. If I pass with higher credit in this preliminary than in the final, there are two reasons. In the final, no one read my work over to me, and in the preliminaries, I offered subjects with some of which I was in a measure familiar before my work in the Cambridge school, for at the beginning of the year I had passed examinations in English, history, French, and German, which Mr. Gilman had gave me from previous Harvard papers. Mr. Gilman sent my written work to the examiners with a certificate that I candidate number 233 had written the paper.